Hi everyone, this is Mindy for Lawn Fawn, and in today's video, I'm going to be creating a underwater scene using the new How You Bean seashells. So first I want to show you the supplies I'm using today. I have the Seahorsin Around, How You Bean seashells. I have Mermaid for You. I also have the original How You Bean. I'm going to use that jar and the lid, and then I have Kohl's ABCs. For colors of ink, I have jet black to do my alcohol ink coloring, guava, merman, and freshly cut grass. For oxide inks, I have blueprint sketch, peacock feathers, cracked pistachio. I'm also going to be using brushed corduroy and antique linen. I also want to show you some of the other supplies that I'll be using, and you can substitute these out for what you may have on hand. But I have some perfect pearls, some white paint, my tweezers, my liquid glue, and I have the dome foam blending tools for my oxides, and I also have a sticky mat. I have some white cardstock and just a grip surface, and I'll do my alcohol ink coloring on Express It cardstock. The first thing I'll do is stamp out the images. So these are all of the images I am going to stamp out in the jet black ink. I have my jar on the top, my mermaid, I have some rocks and also a seahorse. And I will be adding in, when I do also have the seashells from the How You Bean add-on set. The other images I'm going to do in a color ink. So I'm stamping these down in that jet black ink. And then I did also stamp an extra rock just to have that for my scene building. I'm going to clean all of my stamps with my stamp chamois. And now I'm bringing in some of the other elements to add some color. So I have seaweed here. This one is going to get stamped in the freshly cut grass from Lawn Fawn. And I'm going to stamp quite a few of them out. I think I do about 3 each. Even if I don't think I need 3, I like to stamp a few extra just to have on hand. Now I have another piece. These are off of the Mermaid for You stamp set. This one I'm going to ink up in the Merman ink. So just a really nice kind of aqua color. You can use whatever you may have on hand. And I was running out of room on this piece, so I brought in another sheet of the Express It cardstock. And this image I'm stamping in the Guava ink. Now I'm going to start coloring in my image. And the first thing I'm doing is I am actually going to kind of create a small little jar of water, adding some sand at the bottom here in that jar using my Copic markers. And I do have to say, I sincerely apologize. I was only able to get this filming for some reason. My other video clip that has all the other coloring with the mermaid and the rocks, it kept locking up my computer. I could not get that video clip to work. So all I have here is the coloring of the jar, which I still think is super helpful and fun. And it's just a very unique way to use that jar from the How You Bean. Now here I'm using some light blues. I'm also going to take that light blue and just really lightly cover over or color over that sand to give the illusion that the water is kind of mixed with that sand. So here I magically have everything colored in and I use the coordinating dies to die cut everything out. I'm going to jump in and work on my background. So I have a piece of white cardstock cut to 4¼ by 5½. And using my dome foam blending tools, I'm starting with antique linen on one side. Now this is going to be a landscape card. So I went about halfway up, having that antique linen kind of fade off as it gets towards the center. Then I came in with brushed corduroy. And I do come back in with my antique linen blending tool to help kind of smooth out that transition between the two colors. Now I'm going to move to the other side of the cardstock. And here I'm going to start with cracked pistachio. Now, a lot of times when I do my ink blending, I do like a line of cracked pistachio or a specific area using the peacock feathers. But in this case, I am going to layer those colors on top of each other. So with the cracked pistachio, I started all the way on that one side, worked my way towards the center, and have it fade off into white. So I almost have like a strip of white there in between the brown and the cracked pistachio. Then I came in with peacock feathers going over the top of cracked pistachio, but not all the way down. Then I can come in with the blueprint sketch once again at the very edge there. And it just gives it a different tone, a different look because I'm layering these colors on top of each other versus just blending into one another. And I do use the tools to go back and forth between the colors and help kind of smooth out that transition. Once all my blending is done, I'm going to take some of that white paint and mix it with a couple drops of water and just add some white splatters onto my background. And for whatever reason, when I don't use a splatter box, I seem to get more of this white paint on my work surface than I do the actual card. Then I'm taking some of this Perfect Pearls and it's a powder format. So I put a little bit onto my work surface, mixed it again with a couple drops of water, and then sprinkling that or splattering that onto the background. And that's just going to add some shimmer to everything. I'm going to use the Kohl's ABCs to die cut out some letters to create my own custom sentiment. So I did that off screen and I believe I die cut about 4 of each letter to spell out the word shell low. So kind of like hello, play on words, but it's going to be shell. And one of the things here that I'm doing is I'm trimming off a piece of the letter E. I die cut some extra E's and I wanted to have kind of that dash in between the word shell and O. So that is how I created my dash. Now I'm using some liquid glue and my tweezers to layer up all of those letters to create the dimension. I'm using this sticky mat. You can use any sticky mat that you may have. I just find it super helpful when I want to line up my letters. It's holding everything in place and it also has the grid lines in there. You can see I really get my head in to make sure that the bottom of my letters are all lined up with one of those lines on the grid surface. So once I have that kind of perfected and it's stuck down really well, I mean, it's not super sticky, but just enough to hold it in place, I can place over the top some removable scotch tape, and that's going to help me pick up the letters, but keep them held down in place so that they are ready for my card front and they're all nice and in a straight line. I also made sure to leave enough room on each end so that I can pick this tape up easily and move it around. Now I can start working on my scene. So my background is dry and I'm starting with the seashells and I'm going to just add some tape runner to that and add that to the inside of my jar. I can also add the top of my jar. You notice I didn't color the rim of my jar itself, and that was because I knew I was going to be coloring the top separately. So I will just pick that out of my die cut pile and add that to the top. Then I can start working and just kind of laying everything out to get the layout of the scene, making sure things are going to fit where I want them. So right now, nothing is glued down. Once I'm happy with everything, then I can start gluing everything down. Typically, I would use foam squares to help pop things up for dimension, but since a lot of this is getting layered on top of each other, I'm not going to use a lot of foam squares because I'm just tucking things in or placing them over the top. I love how the rock kind of tucks behind the that jar there of the seashells, and then I have another one that's going to be in the front. So it kind of looks like the mermaid is collecting these seashells in a jar. I'm just using a tape runner to add everything, but you could also use your liquid glue if you find that easier. Now, once I finish kind of getting everything tucked in where it needs to be, then I can start working with my sentiment, which I made sure that I left room for. So for this, I am going to use my liquid glue and I'm adding dots of this to the back of the letters. Then using kind of that margin that I left on each side, it's going to help me position that in the center of the card. Then I can carefully peel up that tape. And for the most part, these stayed where they were supposed to be. But one of the L's I did have to shift a little bit, but that is why it's helpful to use liquid glue there because I still had some wiggle room. Now I did set something heavy on it and let that sit for a little bit. And then I'm coming in with some stickles and adding that sparkle to the top of the letters. I probably just could have die cut this out of some like pixie dust or the white glitter cardstock, but I didn't think of it at the time. Then I'm coming in with a white gel pen and adding some of those highlights to the seashells to help that kind of stand out a little bit more. I'm also going to add a few things to the rocks and also my seahorse and a few dots to the mermaid. I could have done the hair, but I was a little nervous about adding highlights to the hair, so I just skipped that part. So that's going to finish off this really fun underwater scene. I love those shells in that jar. I think that is super cute. And I'm really sorry that I didn't have that video clip to finish off the rest of the coloring, but I hope you still enjoyed this video and found some inspiration in it. Thank you so much for joining me today.